Um, I kind of like how this all worked out with me doing this on this computer and then just doing it again at home because I gave you guys a chance to see it for a second time. And it's going to be a little bit more of the same. Like where I left this computer off was we just created our first migration by running a command called add migration, and we called it initial. And I kind of glossed over what a migration is. And so if I write a little comment here, um, is a file. Might also, alternatively just call it a script that contains C# to create, modify, or delete database objects. And so if you kind of inspect this, that's what you're going to see. You're creating tables, modifying the data in those tables. But that's what a migration is. A migration is a file or a script that contains C# to create, modify, or delete database objects. And when you create these migrations, these snapshots will be created for you that will allow you to kind of like roll the state of the database forwards and back into these different states. So if you kind of make a change and you don't want that you might be able to refer to these snapshots for a point in time version of the database. And all I really did at this point on this computer was create the movies database. I had not created the movies controller or any of the views that we created yesterday. So that was a lot of typing and a lot of explaining. I'm going to do more typing and less explaining today because I have gone over it once, but I do want to encourage you guys, like you have been doing, to ask questions if anything doesn't make sense. Yeah.
Do you want me to like upload it on GitHub so you can just pull it so you don't have to write it all? Or do you have it?
I do not have it. So, do you guys want to see it being typed out again? Does it help?
I don't know. I mean,
I think good for repetition.
Good for repetition. That's kind of what I think. And I'm a fast typer, so I can get through it pretty quick, I think. Thanks for the offer. But I'll just go ahead and type it. And so I started by modifying the home controller because our home page is just going to show a list of those movies. And as of right now, we're not doing that. So I deleted pretty much. I think you can just delete everything in here and kind of start from scratch. Of course, we'll need to bring some of it back. Remembering that this movie context class is how we're going to interact with the database. And then what we do is in our constructor, we initialize that context. And so let me get to work coding that after I get my afternoon caffeine flowing. So controller, home controller, let's bring in the constructor, public home controller. It accepts a movie context and we just called it CTX. And this constructor simply initialized this field equal to the context that's passed in. Remember, this is possible. This line is possible because of that dependency injection. Okay, we did that right here. Okay, without line 10 inside of program.cs, this would not ultimately work. Now again, this context is going to be how we interact with our database and we're going to run those link queries ultimately against this context, right? And you saw a little bit of that yesterday, so let's go ahead and write the action method called index, so our default method. We're going to say context movies. This is just going to put our movies in alphabetical order by their name. Going to return the list, return the view of movies. Okay, and then in views, home, we need to start with a strongly typed model, lowercase model, which we're going to receive a list of movie. We kind of wire up this link to a controller that doesn't exist yet, but eventually it will, and we can call the add method, add a new movie. Little HTML table with a T head, T body, 3 table rows, actually 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And that one's empty. There's our body. Little for each C#. Name, year, rating. And our buttons. One thing that's unique on this is the route, ASP route hyphen ID equals edit. Delete. Okay. So we have a controller doing its thing. We have a view that receives a list of movies and spits them out in a table. And at this point, we get our bootstrap table, and we're cooking.
Can you go back to your home controller SPS? Oh, I didn't return to you. Thank you.
Yep. Now, we need to work with the other functions, right? Because we're essentially just doing a list all, and we've done a list all, but we need to edit, delete, and insert. So for that, we're going to create a new controller, empty, call it the movie controller. Whole lot of logic goes into this. This is the movie controller. Bring in the movie context. Right, this would work, right? This syntax, this dot context would be the properties context equals the context of the parameter, but ctx arrow context equals ctx, and we don't need the curlies, and voila. All right.
So would you be able to call CTX anything, or does it have to be separate?
You can call it whatever you want. Yep. Okay, tab. All right, so again, a lot of logic, so I'm just going to get to typing http get. We're going to start with the add method. No parameters. I'll change that action to say, whoop. Just say add. Now, because we never end up making a view specifically for add, we share it. We share the edit view and add. So we actually redirect the add functionality to the edit view and pass an empty movie object to it. Edit, we're going to take in an ID. Remember, find is a method that can look up by the primary ID. I mean, this is very similar to like that database file and the select statements that we were running in JavaScript, right? This is doing the same kind of thing. We're going into the movies table, we're looking it up by its ID. You've done this before. Then you take that single movie and send it back to the view. Okay. The most complex one is the post, because, well, you got to figure out, was it an ad or was it an edit? Public eye action results, even though it's the edit method. By testing if a movie ID is empty, well, up here, when you create a new movie, its ID will be 0 by default. So this is essentially for new movies. So we'll add it. context movies dot add, else we have an edit operation which we can run an update. And then we need to call save changes. Can't tell you how many times I've forgotten to do that. It's just an extra step. Don't forget to save your changes. Okay, so there's our redirect. Now there's an outer else. In which case the validation did not pass, right? So then we just got to send it back to where they came from. View bag dot action equals we got that little ternary operator. I just lectured on the ternary operator this morning. It's an if else. If the movie ID is 0, then the action will be add. If it's not 0, then the action is edit. You've seen that many times. Return. Okay, so there's our get for the add, there's our get for the edit, and then there's a post for the add and the edit. Does not have to be that way, by the way, right? The whole thing that this allows us to do is reuse that view. Why do students want to run through the hallways? You must really have to go to the bathroom. Emergency. Here we go. Moving on. So the other operation besides add and edit is delete. So we need a get for delete and we need a post for delete. Don't forget your, no, we're good. Var movie, find by the ID, and return to the view the movie, just so that you can say, hey, movie name, movie year, are you sure you want to delete it? So we're going to remove a movie, save changes, and redirect to the home page. So if I'm just looking at context, we're running queries against our database with find. We are deleting individual things with remove. We are updating with an update. We are adding with an add. I mean, the methods are pretty well named, right? Add something new, update something, remove something for delete, find to look up by its ID, saving changes along the way, close your curlies, save, controller should be good. The edit view. So we need to go under view. we have the movie controller. So we need a movie view inside of a folder called movie. So under view, this is always the step to remember, right? So you got movie controller. So let's right click, add folder called movie. And then inside of here, we're going to have a view, add a view called edit that does two operations. So for that reason, it's a little bit more complex. But it's one movie at a time. So the model is a singular movie, not a list or anything like that. So viewBag.title, if I go back to movie controller, it's just interesting that the action, if you kind of follow the flow here, the action would be set to either add it or ed. What did I say? Add or ed. Edit.
She had a stroke in computers.
Add it or edit.
Beat you up. What's that?
I guess so. Oh man, it's been a day. But it's going fine. Anyways, and then we pull that action and put it into here. And here they call it view data subtitle. And then you could use it as the view bag.title. So view data subtitle allows us to have this view bag.title that's the same thing. So that'll be in our H2. Why here it's called view data is not clear to me at this point, other than it just is. I do know that if I, for example, if I go into my layout, so here our title of each page is set to @view data subtitle. So because title is one of those things that, you know, every page needs a unique title, yet we're using this layout that allows us to modify the view data title in this fashion by saying view. See, we modify that here so that each page can have a unique title.
So it would either be edit movie or add movie? Is that kind of what it would say there?
Correct. Yeah, exactly. So back on here, we either said add or edit, and so the add movie page, when it's an add movie, the H2 should say add movie. Yeah, form. Okay, and like I did yesterday, once you have one of these, it's essentially the same thing for all three. You just got to make sure you're not a copy paste victim. Year, year, year. And rating. And then we hide the ID because users don't need to see that. And it's probably a very relevant thing that you need to store. ASP4 movie ID. I don't doubt that that ID is absolutely necessary somewhere, but like, what if I were to leave that line off? What would break? I'm not exactly sure. Clearly, you need to find the movie ID. So just sending it, like I'm just, this is on here. We're sending a movie ID over here. That movie ID is 0. And then when you post to add, we need test against that movie ID. So that movie comes in with a movie ID of 0. So if you don't store that on the get, which is essentially what we're doing, is probably not going to come through on the post. Right? So again, on this add, you kind of follow this with me. New movie is going to have a movie ID of 0. It's not actually till it's inserted in the database. That database generates the ID, right? It's the database that generates the new ID for us. But so we kind of send an empty template of a movie ID of 0, into this edit page. It has to store a movie ID of 0 here, so that when the user does in fact click the submit button that we're about to put in there, that it sends that movie ID to the post method with a movie ID of 0. So if you leave this out, I really don't think that would be a pretty scenario. I think it would break. Button type of submits. So speaking of our submit button, class of button, but primary.
So if you were to inspect that page, even though we have the page, would you still be able to see that there is a hidden input?
Yeah, so you do see that, and that's a great question, and we'll do that. But yeah, and typically the values, they'll encrypt them. So let's see if we can see an actual value of movie ID 0. But I've seen a lot of these hidden fields when .NET handles this kind of for us in the background. They used to always be encrypted. I'm fairly sure that'll be the case. In other words, it's not going to put a movie ID of 0 or 5. Yeah. Let's ASP controller home. What did I miss, Vinny? I missed something. Come on. Fill me in.
Mel is just funny.
Okay, so now we have the add and edit view coded up. So we should get those features running. So add new movie. My Bootstrap classes aren't pretty, or are they? If I inspect, oh, I lied. There's value that's not encrypted. Okay, well, there you go. Add new movie. Value of 0. Not like that needs to be encrypted, but I thought it might be. Let's input form control. It's not form input, it's form control. Problem with copy and paste, if you make a mistake, you make it many times.
You have to label every single one as if you're doing like form group. Does every single one have to have form group, or just the top 2?
So you might have noticed, I don't believe I counted off anyone for the form group attribute.
I don't think we ever talked about that.
No, because if you go to the latest here, we'll go to 5.3 is in alpha, but let's just even go to 4.5.2, and we go to docs, and we go to forms. And I just do like a form group. Ain't not on there anymore. Form group is something that was in older versions of Bootstrap, but literally you can't find it in the docs anymore. So when I realized that, I thought, I just need to update my test and get rid of that. Now,
The only thing that's close to is like the input group. So,
yeah, there's right.
so that's what I used on the test.
Yeah. And we did that whole like floating label thing I think that was in the Bootstrap chapter. Anywho, let me pull that back up. And the ad was there. I didn't test it. Add new movie. The Matrix. 1999. 5 stars. Save it. We now have The Matrix. Edit The Matrix down to a 4-star. We're good. If I say 40 stars, range validation. Okay, all that's left is our delete functionality. So we've got the delete functionality in the controller. We do not have the view for it. So home controller, movie controller is going to look for, because there's a method called delete. This method called edit calls this view edit inside of the movie folder. Same thing. This method called delete is going to look for a delete view inside of the movie folder. So let's do that. Add view empty delete. So view data subtitle seems to be a unique instance. Go away. Again, I just want to put an H1 that says my page title is, and just to verify, view bag title is used in here, where here it's view data.title. So I'm just throwing that little blurb in there. Oh, the controller is already assumed. We don't need the controller. Input type of hidden.
I'm good at that. We need to do this or something.
Okay, so there's our delete. Delete's pretty simple. And if I want to now delete this, my page title is delete movie. Sure enough, delete movie, and then hyphen movies. That hyphen movies is coming from the underscore layout page. So my page title is delete movie. That is correct, but then it hyphenates movie. Confirm deletion. To Amel's question, again, just kind of seeing that we are storing the that's an interesting div blog 3QF. What's up, Vinny?
So I noticed like a lot of websites that do this kind of thing, instead of like bringing you to a whole other web page, they'll like just pop up like a little yeah, like just a little tiny square. It'll be like, do you confirm this? And like they'll keep you on the same page, but it'll like, are we gonna get to that, or is that?
Yeah, no, that's
We did something similar last semester. I don't remember the name of it.
It's a modal.
A modal? How do you spell that?
MODAL.
the bootstrap, and that is I think Ryan did that in his final project where he had little modal windows popping up
For the comments, yeah.
for the comments. Yeah, definitely doable. Right now, it's the home controller, and we've separated the logic out. So it would have to be right here on the home controller kind of thing, where you would have a delete method instead. So you just move that logic around. But yeah, and then you just bring in a bootstrap modal and click the button there to confirm, and there you go. Yeah. All right. Well, this gets us caught up to where we were, which is roughly page 161 in the book. And just looking ahead, we've got about 15 more pages. So not a ton left. I'm going to pause the recording here, send you guys on a break. Okay, so we started this with a single entity, but in many cases, you're probably not necessarily starting with a single thing. You might start with a need for many tables. And so we're just going to bring in a second table now and kind of upgrade our current project to have multiple tables. We're in reality, if you were doing this kind of from scratch, you'd probably just bring them all in at once. But whatever, you can do it either approach. I do like the idea of building it up slowly and expanding as you go. And so the next thing, I'm going to close all tabs. The next thing that we're going to create, like right now our only thing is a movie. And movies have genres like action, comedy, horror, so on and so forth. And so does it make sense to make another property and just call it genre? Well, maybe. I think you can make the argument for, hey, just make a genre property. And generally, I would say that more complex things, like if it's a thing with a lot of data about it that you want to store, genre isn't a complex thing. Genre is quite simple. So I think there could be a case made for, instead of creating a separate table for genre, if I were architecting this software, maybe you could make the case for just making it a property of a movie. And by itself, it doesn't need its own table, okay? Not really a point of this class is to debate software architecture, right? But software architecture is exactly that. It's like, okay, what is this thing? Where does this belong? Is it its own thing, or is it a property of another thing? Point is, those conversations need to be had at some point. Moving on, we are going to follow this example and add a genre class. And that is going to be inside of our movie. Again, remember the models will tie into our database tables. And again, this is actually a pretty simple. Now, if you remember, anything that's an integer data type and it has the ID value is going to be a primary key, and it's going to kind of auto increment. If it's not an int, in other words, if this is a string, this will not auto increment like 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And it kind of makes sense. That's what we always did. We made our primary keys integers and they went up 1, 2, 3, 4. But because this is going to be a string, it's not going to do that. And so, A for action, H for horror, that's the string for the genre ID. And then the name, you can call it the genre name or just call it name, which is also a string. And so really it's going to be a simple table, a simple class.
Do we have to set it to string.empty like that book says?
That's right, good eye. So let's go ahead and set some empty strings by default. We will populate this, but what this allows it to do is when you say new genre, I don't think we do that. We don't actually create new genres here. But if you provided an interface for a new genre, that new genre would start with an empty string. All right, now there's a fun relationship. So let's open up the movie. You might remember this from C#. And after our prior properties, let's bring in public genre called genre. It's a property. We can get set it and make it nullable by default. And is there an exclamation point there? Yes, there is. Okay. This is a relationship where a movie, and you always go by the English, has a, right? So a movie has a genre, right? So the data type of this property is a reference type. It is another class. And so when you have a has a relationship, that's called aggregation. Okay, it's just a fun little programming term that we learned about. It's known as a has a relationship. You might also remember a is a relationship. That is not what this is. However, back here, you could say that a movie context is a DB context. I guess the idea is a relationship is how you define inheritance. And so dog is an animal, right? So it's defined on what it is. And when you define things by what things are, that is a relationship, that kind of defines inheritance. When one thing has another thing that's part of it, it has a relationship, that's called aggregation. Okay, whatever, moving on. What this actually will do is create a foreign key. This aggregation relationship will create a foreign key column in the movie table, right? So that we know that there's a genre ID, which is, again, the letter A for action, C for comedy, so on and so forth. There will be a foreign key column for the letter A or C or H or whatever it may be.
Are we going to get into like if a movie has multiple genres? Some are like action, adventure, horror, comedy.
I'm sorry, I'm hearing you, but I'm not listening. Give me just a split second. Because we also need the genre ID. Public string genre ID get set equals string dot empty. And it's actually this ID column that is the foreign key column. There we go. Vinny, your question, please.
I was saying if, like, a lot of movies have multiple genres, so like it'll be like a horror and a comedy, or an action and adventure. So like, are we gonna get into that, or like
Well, I don't know, man. When I worked at Hollywood Video, and I worked at Hollywood Video, we just had an action section.
So like
I'm joking more or less, but then you would have an array of genres here.
Okay.
Right?
I guess what I'm saying is like, yeah, are we gonna do that so that we can
It
have multiple?
completely possible. We're not going to do that today, but I think that's a reasonable thing to do, and within our capabilities, yes.
Okay, so
Yep. Yep.
So just because you have the genre ID and then the public genre, that's how it knows to add a foreign key.
Pretty
to-
smart, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean
Yeah.
that's cool that it knows how to do that. It's just like, what if you like screwed up some sort of naming convention somewhere else and then it starts adding a foreign key?
Yeah.
It doesn't do that. Though. You'd have to know what you're doing to get to that point, I guess.
Well, and Sam kind of pointed it out. It's like, man, if you don't code it exactly how it needs to be, the conventions that is, then things will break.
Sure.
And I think that's it's kind of what you're leaning on is like, hey, I'm not sure that I addressed what you were saying.
You did. I mean,
Okay.
it's just like, it's just weird how everything gets kind of done automatically.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where this and Node
Seem a little different.
very different. Yeah.
Yeah. A lot's being done for you here, and on Node that just wasn't the case seemingly, right? A lot less was done for you. And again, I'd be curious even at the end of this to hear from you guys which class you liked better, which technology stack you liked better, right? Forget the class, quote unquote, but what stack you like working with. Yeah, so this genre ID is going to be the foreign key. Now, let's add some validation on these. So on the genre ID, the way this is going to wind up working is it's going to be I believe it's a drop-down list of like action, sci-fi, whatever. And we're going to mark this as required. Yeah, good eye. Error message, please enter a genre. And the way this book works is we kind of like do like a lot of things in this chapter, and we do get into deeper details throughout the book as things go. Like we take a closer look at controllers. We're going to take a much closer look at views and all the different things that you can do. We're going to take a much closer look at validation and all the ways that validation can work. And kind of like the last thing that we do here, that drop-down list on the front end is going to work with this genre ID. And when you're like creating a new movie and you select from a drop-down list, it's going to populate the genre ID. and therefore it will autofill kind of the genre of action kind of thing. But imagine, having said that, we set the genre ID using the control. There is no control to set the genre. And so what they recommend here to kind of avoid potential problems is to make sure to turn off validation on genre. The way that you can actually turn off validation, and we haven't done this before, is with an attribute. So we'll kind of come up to the top and add another using Microsoft.NET Core MVC model binding validation. So we add this using statement here. And then with that, we can come down and say validate never. And that's a way to turn off validation on a field to avoid that kind of problem when you're inserting a new movie, and therefore it inserts the genre ID. Therefore, it will be able to kind of query the genre table to then pull in the genre with that action ID. Well, we're not setting a genre, so we don't need to validate it at that point.
What was the rest of that using statement?
And we do dive deeper into like the primary key, foreign key relationships that are automatically created for us. They mention in chapter 12. So kind of jumping into chapter 12, we do a deeper dive on Entity Framework Core. So this is a lot of assumptions are being made here by us that we haven't learned about yet. We're just being told it will work, and we assume that it will. Now let's hop back into our DB context, which was called movie context inside of models. And we are going to seed some more data. Notice this DB set movies. It now has a bunch of references because, well, we did so in our controllers. We brought in a movie context and we referenced movies dot add, movies dot update, movies dot remove. So now we've got these references. This is just the method that runs when you're kind of doing those migrations. It helps generate those migrations. And so we're going to create another migration and seed some different data because now we have genres. And so we'll create another public table DB set of genres get set equals null. And then inside of this method on model creating, we'll seed some genres. Model builder, you could probably take a look at there we go, model builder. It's not Bidler?
Baby Batman.
Oh goodness, has data. Now it'll take an array of genres. New genre, curlies, genre ID. I love the syntax, by the way, for creating objects using these properties. We got action. We've got comedy.
It's a lot like JSON almost, right?
Sure. Property.
It's like setting property.
Property colon value instead of property equals value. Yeah.
I just like how intuitive it is.
H. You guys listen to any good musicals lately?
Musicals?
That's just the genre I'm on.
I mean, my girlfriend's really into theater, so I'm always listening to like her stuff.
What's her stuff?
They just did. Let me think. I'm terrible for remembering. They just did some Shakespeare, which is always a classic. Like these are full-on plays. They're doing. They're doing Mousetrap. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. I think so. Sounds about right.
Okay, so step one on this file to seed the new genres, but then we're also going to populate our movies to have genres, right? So again, the way this kind of works on the back end for us is by setting the genre ID to D. Keep in mind, our movies have genre IDs and they don't have genre names. Okay, all you see is the genre ID. So in a movie, all you see is the letter A, B, C, whatever the letter is. You don't actually see the name in the movie itself. My brain was telling me that we were going to see the name over here, but that does not look to be the case. Anyways, back over here, on our movies, we need to update them to have genre IDs, comma, genre ID of action. And because you guys are great at remembering your join statements, right? You can query a table with a genre ID of D and get the full name of drama to get in your result sets. Kind of thing, right? R for rom-com. So we're updating this, and we're updating these genre IDs.
You just need to be in one. So.
Yep.
I think it's pretty cool. When you hovered over genre ID equals R, it actually made the correlated genre ID in the builder. It made it pink. You see that?
Mm-hmm.
Smart.
It's a smart tool.
And then the genre ID in the movies will be like the foreign key, right?
That's correct. Yeah, this will be, and that we'll kind of see that when we when we get to the next page. We'll see that foreign key set up.
I'm caught up.
One of my known faults as an instructor is that I type fast and I move fast. I used to have a coworker who would talk fast. He was just the known, kind of like the auctioneer. Great guy, great instructor, but he had faults. We're all humans. We all have faults. I have a fault is that I type fast. I have many faults. I have other faults, and clearly you guys know me after 2 years. You know my faults. But I do move fast, and so I need to be comfortable with you guys saying, Mr. G, slow down. And I'm comfortable with that. At the same time, you guys keep up pretty well, and I appreciate because you pay attention, and you're on the ball. I'm not looking forward to potential classes that don't do that. So yes.
So we only did the data for the genre and then put it in the movies, right?
That's all we did. Vinny, what'd you say?
It's so funny. Oh.
What'd I miss?
His Vinny said, "You're gonna miss us," and then he immediately started talking. That just got me. I'm sorry.
Here we go. Now we're going to do another one of these migrations, right? Migrations, we're going to change the state of the database. We did that at the console, so we're going to go Tools, Package Manager, Console. Add -migration genre. Enter. Okay. This is the migration file that was created under the migrations folder. What is this number? 2023, clearly the year, January 26th.
That might be the date, because I see a 14 on there, which is the time. Yeah. Date and time.
We got
26.
2014, so that's,
Yeah. 14 is military time for 2, and then 13 is the seconds, or the minutes.
hold on, I lost it, January 26th, which is
So-
the date, but what's 2014-18?
I don't know the 20, but the 14 is. 12.
That's 2 o'clock,
2 o'clock.
right? That's 2. Okay, that's 2:18. Yeah, who knows? Okay, moving on. What are we doing? We're adding a column genre ID to the movies table. We're creating a table called genres, inserting data, primary key. Here it is, add foreign key. The movies table foreign key column comes from the principal table of genre ID. There's a little magic to link that up. It's also interesting, it has an up method and a down method, right? So if you want to reverse this migration, there's an update database which would run up. I'm sure there's another command to bring it back down, right? Makes sense. So let's run that second command of update-database, which is going to run this migration file. Ooh, ooh,
That
ooh,
spelling looks so nice.
ooh. Did you guys get errors, or did you guys were yours
I
clean?
got a different error.
I got.
It looks like mine worked fine.
Mine says there was already an object named movies in the database.
I got the same one you got. No, that Mr. Street got.
All right. Let's see the result if it did in fact create the table. But you're gonna go into movies. Let's click this refresh button. Databases, movies, tables. Okay, it did not create my genres table, so the alter table conflicted with the foreign key movies, genres, genre ID. So I was just literally talking about that right here. I was literally just talking about that. The conflict occurred in the database movies table DBO genres column genre. Okay, do you see this? Genres, genre ID. Go back to movie. Go to genre ID.
What did you type before prior to update database? I might have missed that. Did you do?
I did. It was called add-migrations, or add migration space genre with a capital G. All right, let me troubleshoot this off the camera. Okay, so we fixed our problems off camera, but future, if like one person in the future watches this, I personally added a movie, and when I added a movie, whatever that movie name was, I did not seed that movie with a genre. And so if you kind of look at my genre, what it does here is it updates these particular movies, movie ID of 1 with a genre ID, movie ID of 2 with a genre ID. And so I had to, give, ultimately that was the problem. And so by removing that movie, rerunning update database, it worked. And so that makes sense in my mind, and the students that were having issues ultimately did a similar kind of fix where they just removed the database and then recreated it. Where we are currently at is we now have a genres table, and if we view that data, you could see the genre IDs and the names. And if we view our movies, they have a genre ID as well, which is a foreign key. Now, you might remember this from the C# class, but you can view designer. And so by viewing a designer view of this table, you can see that a foreign key does exist. You can see the SQL code that was used to generate that foreign key. As far as the name of the foreign key is this. This is the name of the foreign key. This column references this others table genre ID column. And then on delete cascade, a cascading delete is to say, hey, if I delete the drama genre, then go ahead and delete the movies that are genres, drama genres. Awesome. All right. What's left, obviously we've got this data in a database, but what's left is to actually get them working on the front end and get them into our views. And so let's go ahead and open up the home controller. So we got the model taken care of. So then we'll go to the controller, home controller. And on our index, we add, because this is the movies table, right? We're hitting the movies table now. We're always hitting the movies table. But we need to also include movies.include, and then do an order by. We need to bring in Entity Framework Core. So up at the top, using Microsoft Entity Framework Core. That should allow us to bring in this include method. There we go. Okay, so this says to include this foreign key column. Now the foreign key was genre ID. This is not actually genre ID. This is to include the genre. More or less the genre object, right? Which the genre object has an ID and a name, so that we can get the name to the user on the front end, right? They want to see the name. So include the genre object of the movie, and then in the home view, so views, home, index. In our for each loop, after the rating, before the rating, doesn't really matter, I suppose. And after the year, before the rating, so we're going to add another T. You know what? If you guys were following me, these are THs. These are table headings.
What does that do? It just makes it like bold.
Makes it bold, yeah. I got one too many extra T heads. There we go. Clean that up. I don't like these errors. TH. Why are you barking at me? It's not nested. T head. Close the T head. It's not a good warning. So name, year, genre, rating. Name, year. Okay, so here, down in our TD. Yeah.
You had all the THs and a TR, like a table row, like nested inside of it.
I got a TR in here? Where's my TR?
Yeah, I'm saying that's what you had before. So I kept that now.
Oh, I'm just missing the doggone TR. There's one TR, and inside of the TR we got THs.
Then all the
Cool.
THs inside the
Save. Sorry for the silly mistakes, but good eye. Thank you. This is the useful part at movie.genre.name. So we'll display the genre name to the user on the front end, and that should clean that up. And now we are displaying related data from different tables. Well, because obviously genre ID is being displayed, are being stored in the table. Very cool. So we've created a genre table inside of our database, made it a related table to movies, and we now have genres showing on our load. But obviously we need to add new movies and edit movies and delete. So we just got to kind of finish that up. And it can be done in not a ton of code. So let's open up our movie controller. And here we have our add. And so the way that we can provide genres to our add method is by hitting this context and just loading up all the genres inside of a view bag property. And so we'll say view bag dot genres equals, and we'll go ahead and query our context dot genres. And we can do an order by genre.name and get it to lists. So that's going to allow us to get a list of genres. And again, we're going to put those in a drop-down list on the front end. And that's on the add method in the movie controller. Now in the edit action, that's a get request. So here's our edit action that's a get request. We're literally going to do the same thing. Copy that line of code and paste. And so that was the edit that was a get. Then there's an edit there's a post. And in the bottom else block, it's the same line of code that we already copied. So I'm going to paste that same line of code a second time. So it's that same line there. And so that handles our controller. That's just getting the genres into the front end on these different methods. And so now we go to the front end. So let's open up the movie folder, the edit view inside the movie folder, inside of view. So /views/movie edit is what I'm looking at here. And here's our form. So name, year, rating. We get to slip in the genre in there. And we can put it where we want. Just kind of curious where the book put it. Because make it look the same, why not? And so genre comes after the year. And so after the year div, let's add a div class. This is a label for genre ID class. So here's our drop-down list. Notice this is also for the genre ID. Class is form-select. The default option is empty. And it says select a genre. And then for each genre G in view bag dot genres, which we loaded that. Again, this is our edit, which we loaded up view bag dot genres inside of our edit. We add an option. So what goes in between here is what the user sees. So the genre name is what the user sees, but what's being used in the code is the ID of the genre, like A for action, H for horror. And so when you go to add a new movie, it's putting in like the letter A into the movie table for the genre ID. And if that's working, if I go to add a new movie, we now have a drop-down list. Comedy. Dumb and Dumber. Year was 1996. So we got comedy in there. And if I say it's instead action. So our edit is working and our add is working. Delete. Didn't have to do anything with delete. Delete's working. And that's a 95% done with this chapter. We have just a couple of small things we can cover. So one mistake was on the delete view. If you go there right now, it doesn't say what movie you're actually deleting. So we need to actually bring in the model.name. And then we'll say at model.year.
Oh yeah, we did that one yesterday.
And that way, at least now, when I go to delete a movie, it gives me Casablanca 1942. Okay, the next thing that we do, which I understand, is kind of help our URLs be a little bit more user-friendly. And so one thing that they do for that, and to make everything lowercase, right? So that makes it URLs just a little bit easier on the eyes, as well as they add a trailing / at the very end. And so these is just with a couple of quick settings, we can make that change and make our URLs lowercase, a little easier on the eyes, and add that / at the end. Again, a little bit more user-friendly. How to do that? Yeah, that's coming up next. Yeah. Yep. Which is a fun term, right? A slug. This is going to be inside. I'm going to close everything. We got a lot open. Close all tabs. Open my program CS. We got this builder, and notice we've added one line, builder.services property. Underneath that, I'm going to add builder.services, add routing, options, arrow curly, options lowercase URLs equals true, options dot append trailing slash equals true. And I need a semicolon. And that should make that happy. Now we've got lowercase URLs, and we've got a trailing slash.
So I understand lowercase URLs, but what is the trailing slash doing for us?
It's the slash at the end of the URL.
It makes
I mean, like
some people happy.
Okay. Interesting. You're supposed to look at it.
Like if you see a website, usually it's maybe not.
It's just, I would say they're both conventions, right? They're not like hard, you must do these things, but
That's a little more professional.
literally, some developers like to include a trailing slash after each URL to make it easy for users to type text at the end of a URL. So, meh. I could do with or without the trailing slash.
Yours working?
Mine is working, yes.
Mine is not.
Yeah, mine works.
So if you go to add new movie, it's movie add slash. Yours is not.
Slash, but it's also not lowercase and everything.
Double check your code here. If you want another set of eyes, I'm happy to look. All right, so the last page of the chapter, and this was a lengthy chapter, talks about adding a slug. I'm going to read out loud. A slug is a descriptive section that comes at the end of a URL, often after UR sections that are used to look up data, such as a primary key value or date. And so it's just additional info that's not really needed by our software. Instead, it just makes it really clear to the user that movie number 2 is Forrest Gump, right? So it just makes the URL much more readable to the end user. Even though our software isn't using the title, instead it's using the ID, just makes it more readable to the user. So let's scroll to the bottom of our program CS. And after the optional ID, we add an optional thing called a slug.
That's one thing.
It is and then we have to define like what is the data that's going to go in the URL. And this is actually done in the model. So let's go to the movie class. And I'm going to go to the bottom here. This is what's called a read-only property. The property is called slug. And this is a little bit of C# that kind of does some concatenation and trickery. We'll discuss it. Name.replace an empty space with a hyphen. So if there's a name, if name, is truthy kind of thing, replace in that name, so Forrest space Gump becomes Forrest hyphen Gump. Let's also make it 2 lower, because our plus a hyphen. And then let's add in, is there a year? If so, let's toString the year, because it's probably going to be an int. So you're just putting the name, hyphen, then the year. And we're going to put that in the URL.
Is there a reason we use single quotes instead of double quotes?
You could use double quotes. I opt for the single. Then the last thing to do is to get that slug data into the view. You know, you need to get it on the front end. So in the home index view, so we're going views, home index. We're going to put this slug on the edit page and on the delete page. So there's another attribute helper, ASP route slug equals at movie.slug. That's what we just created. That's all she wrote for chapter 4. Let's test it.
It works.
And if we click edit, we got Casablanca 1942. Again, this is just for the end user to, have a nice clean experience. Go to delete, Moonstruck 1988.
So would it work just typing that in rather than like clicking on the link?
Yeah, you can navigate to that path that way.
Nice.
Yep.
That's cool.
how
So
does
like
that
if I were to
work?
copy this, right? So if I just copy this and
Yeah.
I
maybe
assume that works
just
the same way, like when you're
reload the
when you're
page.
adding permissions to it. So like you don't want any user to just be able to delete Casablanca. So if they type that in, like if they just navigate to it directly from the search bar.
Oh, you're just jumping ahead to that whole credentials chapter and
Just can't wait to get into it.
it's just like we did before, right? There's authorization versus authentication
Okay.
and breaking those out, which is coming when Vinny, I'm going into this. There it is, chapter 16.